So hi everyone, we're back here with the second part of the Hive configuration. Um, Unfortunately, the last time I did the first practical I had my microphone switched off, so I'm just going to quickly go over what we covered in the last practical. So the idea is the same as been for the last couple of tools that we downloaded on Ontard. So we basically download Hive, Ontard it, moved it up to the op directory, added a few environment variables to the .bashrc file, and then source the .bashrc file. Here we're trying to create a few directories that Hive will use in order to store table data. So we created these user Hive warehouse directory and under the HDFS DFS file system. We changed permissions to allow groups to write to this particular directory, which will store all the internal data. What we need with Hive is a metastore, and the metastore basically stores all the metadata regarding all the Hive tables that are stored. And we are going to use the MySQL server to host that particular metastore, which is just a database. So what we're doing here is we're copying over the SQLJ connector into the opt-hive lib directory. And we've already downloaded this MySQLJ connector from the previous practical, so it's just a matter of grabbing a copy of it and copying it up into opt-hive lib directory, making sure that Hadoop is the the owner of the actual file. So once we have that done, there is a Hive site.xml file that we have to use in order to set the properties for the Hive configuration. The properties that we're going to set is connection URL, the connection driver name, the connection username, and the connection password. So you might just do a search for these. This file is quite large, so it's better to do a search for these terms and just to add in the values for these particular properties. So again, we're using the MySQL server to host this metastore database. So this is what we're doing here. We're saying that our MySQL server is hosted on hadoop1.example.com at port 3306 metastore, and the driver we're using is the mysql.jgpc driver. Now we must set up an account on our MySQL server for this particular database, and the account is under Hive user. The name of the user is Hive user, and the name of the password is Hive password in order to gain access to this metastore. These are just temporary directories that Hive uses for a scratch area for doing sorts and groups, and these other two again are temporary directories used for log files and for temporary local directory for added resources that's needed for remote files. So once we have that configured, we just close that file down and we open up a MySQL shell. So make sure you have the MySQL server running in the background, and we open up a MySQL shell logging on as root, and we create the database metastore, and then we issue the command use metastore from a MySQL session. So what we want to do is to create the initial schema for this metastore database. So there is a script available for us to do that, and the script is in under /up/hive/scripts metastore upgrade MySQL directory, and in there should be a script file called with the extension .sql that would be related to the edition that you have configured. So the edition that we're using is 2.3.2, I think. So we should have a Hive-schema hyphen 2.3.2 mysql.sql script there for you to run. So to run that script, at the MySQL prompt you type source and then the name of that script .mysql.sql. So just look out for that particular script file that matches your Hive edition or version. So once you have that run, you want to allow the Hive user, create the Hive user through the MySQL session. Oops. And we want to grant privileges to the Hive user so that we can do selects and inserts and creates, and then we flush the privileges for that particular account. And once we have that done, we need to start the Metastore in the background. So I'll go ahead and undo that now, because I closed down this machine earlier on. And make sure you have your services running in the background. And I'm logged in as Hadoop, and I will just type Hive service Metastore. And this should start the Metastore in the background. Again, the Metastore is run on the MySQL server. So it's attempting to start the Metastore. And that looks okay. So sometimes the Metastore won't start if you don't have the MySQL server running in the background. So just make sure you have that server running in the background. So that looks okay. So we just close that terminal down. And we want to open up another terminal, keeping that Metastore running in the background. We want to open up another terminal, and we want to type in Hive to get us a Hive command prompt. And so if we type in show tables, yeah, it's empty. So at the moment we don't have anything there. So what we want to do is go ahead now and start our tutorial. So again, what we wanted to do was to take some CSV files that we may have on HDFS, and we may want to create a few internal tables using those CSV files. So we have Sean Layman even, his baseball data sets that we downloaded in the previous practicals. So we're going to use a few of those data sets, namely the masters, the salaries, the battings, and I think the parks later on in the practical. So we'll just put them up onto our HDFS file system. So if we open up another terminal and we go to the downloads folder, and inside the downloads folder we have the baseball and we should put up a few of these. So HDFS, DFS, dash put, and we want to put them to the temp directory. So the name of them is master.csv, and put them to the temporary folder. And we also want to put the batting and I do know that we will use the parks one later on the practical, so we'll put that up as well. Okay, that's 3 CSV files that we have on our HDFS file system. So we want to create a table called Salaries with 5 columns suitable for the salaries.csv file that we put on the HDFS. We then load the data from HDFS into a table under the 5 field names. Okay, so we'll create a table, and the table will have 5 fields, namely year ID, team ID, league ID, player ID, and salary. So at the Hive prompt, we're going to create a table. So create table, salaries, and open up the bracket. So as you can see, that the syntax is very similar to SQL syntax, so that's why it's become so popular. So your ID is an int, team ID is a character of 4 spaces, league ID is a character of 3 spaces, player ID is character of 15 and salary is an int. And the row format, delimited fields terminated by a comma, and it is going to be stored as a text file. Okay, so create table salaries, year ID is int, team ID is character 4, league ID is character 4, and I can see a mistake. I don't. Okay, so I haven't got a comma here. Player ID is character, salary is int. Row format, stored as text file. Row format, delimited fields. Okay, third time lucky. Okay, so you can see the description of it here. Okay, so we've done that. And what we want to do is load the data from the CSV file that we have up under user Hadoop or the temp directory. We have it in two places, and insert that data into the table salaries. So load data in path and user Hadoop salaries.csv overwrite into table salaries. And no file is matching that. Yes, Aduna, if you would look to see where your salaries is, that would help. Let's have a look to see what's here. Maybe I didn't put it up. No, so I might just pop it up again. Okay, so let's have a go at doing this again. So load data in path, and I've put it under the temp directory. Salaries, overwrite into table salaries. Okay, and then if I do a select asterisk from salaries, it should give me the data. Okay, so that's that first one done. So we want to answer a few queries on that. So sum the salaries of each baseball team in ascending order and identify the player with the highest salary in each team. So go ahead and attempt to do those things, and we'll be back again for the second task.